The Nintendo Switch 2 is finally here, and it's got a $450 price tag. Add in the fact that some games are now hitting 80 bucks, and you're staring down a pretty expensive handheld experience. So the big question is the Switch 2 actually worth it? Or should you hold off and save your cash? In this video, I'm gonna break it all down. Let's start with the design. This thing looks and feels brand new, even if it's not particularly flashy. I'm all about OLED displays, but I have to say the Switch 2's 1080p LCD screen is absolutely gorgeous. It's bright, colorful, and a big improvement over the original Switch's 720p panel. Even as a Steam Deck OLED user, I didn't feel shortchanged by the Switch 2's LCD panel. That's a testament to just how vivid the console's 7.9-inch display looks. Not only do games look great, but they also perform like a dream thanks to the buttery smooth refresh rate that can hit up to 120 Hz in both handheld and dock modes. Redeeming myself. One of the biggest upgrades is the magnetic Joy-Cons. They snap on and off with a satisfying click and feel way sturdier than the old ones. This is the kind of quality of life change you don't notice until you go back to the original and go, yikes. Overall, the Switch 2's design makes it feel less like a toy and more like a serious piece of tech, and that's without losing the Nintendo charm that's appealing even to non-Nintendo superfans like me. Now let's talk gaming performance. The Switch 2 runs on a custom NVIDIA chip that helps it run graphically demanding games that the previous model couldn't handle. Games like Tears of the Kingdom and Mario Kart World have smooth frame rates and shorter loading times. The Switch 2 can even handle some cross-platform titles you think it couldn't, such as Street Fighter 6 and Cyberpunk 2077. Yeah, it's not comparable to a PS5, but the Switch 2 is easily the most powerful Nintendo console ever. I already hear the Steam Deck crowd typing in the comments, and I get it, I'm a Steam Deck fanboy myself, but let's be honest, that handheld is for people looking for a machine that's an extension of or a replacement to their existing gaming rig. The Switch 2 isn't trying to be a PC. That said, it can play graphically demanding games without blowing up. That's pretty impressive if you ask me. The Switch 2's dock also helps the system achieve better performance and fidelity. In dock mode, games can play at up to 4K resolution and 60 frames a second, or at 1080p and 120 frames a second if your TV supports the latter. If a game doesn't natively output at 4K, dock will upscale it, and I have to say, it does a pretty darn good job of it. And if that wasn't enough, dock mode also supports HDR. If you combine that with an OLED display, your eyes are in for a treat. The Nintendo Switch 2 has some exclusive features that you might or might not find useful. One of these is mouse mode, which allows you to use the right Joy-Con like a computer mouse. Using it is both weird and intuitive since the Joy-Con is so thin yet highly responsive. I personally don't have a use for mouse mode since it's kind of gimmicky, but it wouldn't be Nintendo without some fun weirdness. And I'm sure some games will come along besides Nintendo Switch 2 Welcome Tour that really take advantage of mouse mode. Then there's GameChat, which allows you to talk with friends while playing games. This feature enables voice chat, screen sharing, and even video chat via a compatible USB-C camera. You can have up to 12 players in a voice session, and up to 4 can share the screens or participate in video calls. All right, time to take this.
Oh my goodness.
You already know. While I like using GameChat when playing Mario Kart World with my boys, I'll be the first to admit that this is a feature PlayStation and Xbox have had for years. The fact that GameChat is locked behind the Nintendo Switch Online paywall is also kind of a bummer. But keep in mind that subscribing to Nintendo Switch Online also gives you access to classic Nintendo and Super Nintendo games with the basic account, and access to GameCube and Sega Genesis games with the expansion pack. So even though I don't use GameChat often, having access to games of my youth like Super Mario World and Donkey Kong Country makes subscribing to Nintendo Switch Online worth it. Having GameChat is just a nice bonus. All right, I know that I've thrown a lot at you, but I wanted to say that if you're digging this breakdown, hit that like button and subscribe for more buy or skip videos. We keep it real, tell you what matters, and save you from buyer's remorse. Now, let's get into why you may want to skip the Nintendo Switch 2. You guys know me, and you know I don't sugarcoat stuff, even for products I like. The Nintendo Switch 2 battery life is rough. Based on our testing, we're getting about 2.5 hours on demanding games. That's way less than the 5 hours of playtime we got on the Switch OLED, but a little better than the 2 hours I got from the Steam Deck OLED. When playing Switch 2, you'll either be tethered to an outlet or have to pack a power bank, which kind of defeats the whole on-the-go vibe. I will say Belkin is selling this travel case that comes with a 20-watt charger inside. I think something like this is a must-have for anyone who plans to take the Switch 2 on the go, so I'll link it in the description in case you want to check it out. Of course, if you're like me and play Switch 2 in dock mode at home, battery life won't be an issue, but I digress. Another potential handheld mode issue is that the system is heavier and thicker than the original Switch. I actually like the heavier system since the additional weight makes it feel like a premium product instead of a plastic toy. However, I'm sure the heavier weight will be a hindrance for some people. Long handheld sessions can get uncomfortable, especially without grips or support on the Joy-Cons. If you want to play your games on the go, you might want some grip accessories to save your wrist. I'll drop my top recommendations in the description. Again, I mostly play in dock mode, so the Switch 2's weight isn't a factor. But if the console gets too heavy for you and you're not a fan of the Joy-Cons, I suggest using the redesigned kickstand to prop it up on the table and play with the more ergonomic Pro Controller. The last reason you might want to skip the Nintendo Switch 2 is because of its asking price. Right now, the Switch 2 costs $449 for just the base system or $449 for the Mario Kart bundle. That's not exactly cheap, especially when you consider that the entry-level Steam Deck costs $399 and has access to a wider library of games. That last point is another reason why the Switch 2's price stings so much. Presently, the only Switch 2 exclusive title you can buy is Mario Kart World. Every other game is either a Switch 1 enhanced port or a third-party title you can purchase on other platforms, some for a lot cheaper. While the Switch 2's cost is arguably justifiable since it's the only system with first-party Nintendo games, its asking price is hard to swallow. So, should you buy or skip the Nintendo Switch 2? Buy it for the performance boost, the updated design, and for Nintendo's first-party games. Speaking of games, let me know if you want a video on the best Switch 2 games to play first. Conversely, you should skip the Nintendo Switch 2 if the 2-hour battery life is a deal breaker, its upgrades don't sound compelling, or if its asking price is a little too high. Faults aside, the Switch 2 is a worthy update if you're coming from the original Switch or Switch Lite. It's not perfect, but it's the best version of what Nintendo does best. Yeah, there we go. That's it for this episode of Buy or Skip. Let me know in the comments, are you picking up the Switch 2 or are you waiting for something better? If this helped you out, hit that like button, subscribe for more reviews, and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next breakdown. Once again, I was Tony Polanco, and I'll see you on the next one. Later. I don't know how it is with you guys, but growing up, to my parents, every system, even if it was Sega, was a Nintendo.